All righty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. Thank you for so much for tuning in. It is a chilly here in the St. Louis area, a chilly Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. That's right. It's our first episode of the new year. Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season. I'm the Maestro, Jeremy Karp. We got quite a bit to talk about this evening, and I want to kick it off by some latest news that has happened over the course of today. And we're going to start with the fact that after 14 seasons, Pete Carroll is no longer the Seattle Seahawks head coach. The team confirmed the news saying that Pete Carroll would remain with the organization in a capacity as an advisor. Um, it's definitely it's definitely shocking because on Monday, Pete Carroll just told a radio interview that he had planned to coach the Seahawks next season, even though he's 73 years old, and a lot of people were feeling that at his age, maybe the time to retire was coming up. Nevertheless, he's stuck around. Um, so Pete Carroll will be out in his 14 years. Carroll had a 137 and 89 and 1 record. He took the Seahawks to two Super Bowls, winning one of them in Super Bowl 53. Um, and, or I'm sorry, I don't believe that is the correct one. That's Super Bowl 48. I'm sorry. In Super Bowl 48, he had beaten the Denver Broncos 43-8. And it's crazy to think about because the Broncos offense was unbelievable. And Hollywood James Knox, thank you so much for tuning in, buddy. And if you're available, be sure to let me know if you are, because I'd love to have you on because we got plenty we need to talk about this evening, especially regarding a coach that you're very familiar with, um, and hoping that we'll see where his next role is. I want to talk about a couple other firings that have happened in the NFL. First, we're going to start with the fact that Titans coach Mike Vrabel is no longer with the team. Um, After a very down year for the Tennessee Titans, in which um, three different quarterbacks took the reins, injury riddled. You know, it just nothing went right, and it was despite the fact that just a few years ago, it was just a couple years ago, they went to the AFC Championship game. They were right on the cusp of so many great things. But Mike Vrabel, a longtime coach in or a longtime member of the NFL family, been a longtime player on the New England Patriots, and it's definitely sad to see Vrabel go. I do feel like he is not necessarily the was necessarily the issue. I think it goes down to front office issues. Um, because when you take a look at it, I mean, they traded AJ Brown's arguably their best receiver, and he's one of the top receivers in the NFL, and they traded him away for basically nothing. Um, and the execution on the offense hasn't panned out well ever since. So, we have that. Also, Falcons coach Arthur Smith has been fired after 3 seasons, all three of which he went 7-10. So, not exactly the ideal record you would want, and especially when you have talent like Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Desmond Ritter, Drake London. You're expecting a lot more, and of course, missing the playoffs doesn't help the situation either. So, you know, um, yeah, I it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Now, I do want to talk about something regarding the Kansas City Chiefs before we get further into playoff talk and previews. Okay. The first thing is for Patrick Mahomes. Okay, this was definitely his worst season of his career. Now, despite the Chiefs winning the division, and this weekend they will be hosting the Dolphins, and probably it will be the coldest playoff game in a long time. It wasn't the season he hoped for. He averaged just 7 yards per pass, just 261 yards a game. He he threw an interception on 2.3% of his passes, which is the highest. And his passer rating was 92.6, which is also the lowest. Now, a lot of this, once again, has to do with the fact that Patrick Mahomes, well, it's not even Mahomes' fault. Okay, let me put that perfectly clear with people. Patrick Mahomes is not to blame for the fact that the Chiefs struggled so much offensively. Is he, innocent from it? No. But when you look at his receivers, I mean, Travis Kelce was injury riddled most of the season. Even though he had over 970 receiving yards, a lot of issues on the offensive line. The Chiefs receivers combined to drop 40 passes this season, so that's over 6.5% of their targets. I mean, now come on. Now, okay. Despite them still being a threat because of their defense, teams are not as afraid of the Chiefs as they used to be, in my personal opinion. That being said, and we're going to talk about this later on in our wild card preview, I do feel that the Chiefs still have a very distinct advantage over the Miami Dolphins, strictly based on the fact of the environment. I'm sorry, but I mean, Miami Dolphins are going to a place where it's going to be snowing. It's going to be 0 degrees Fahrenheit base temperature. But I don't know. Now, there was one other move I talked about before the show started. Or I'm sorry, I talked about in the beginning of the show about the firings of Mike Vrabel, Arthur Smith, Pete Carroll as a head coach. But there is one coaching move that happened today that absolutely blew my mind. And I would love to talk about it. I would love to talk about it, but I'm not the one that can talk about it, and I can't do him justice. So I'm going to make a call to an old friend. In fact, if you look on the background of this show, he's half of the hosts of the show. And it's been over a year since he's been on, and it's been an absolute pleasure. I was talking with him. I've known him for almost a decade now. But ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to truly welcome back to Roundabout Sports this evening, the one and only Hollywood James Knox.
Good evening, Jeremy. How are we doing?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you? It is good to see you again.
I'm sad. I'm very sad. Actually, I think I'm like everybody else. I did not see the retirement of one Nick Saban coming at all. Kind of blindsided by it. So, and if you, as soon as I got home from work and heard the news, I kind of tuned into the SEC Network and the Paul Feinbaum show, and all of them were taken aback by the fact that Nick Saban, after 17 years at the University of Alabama, has decided to step down.
Yeah, and I know that everybody's just, I mean, after 17 seasons, I mean, he spent 28 years as a college head coach. And in those 28 years, he's won 7 national titles. Obviously, his first at LSU in 2003, but then his next 6 were at Alabama. And our dear friend Christopher Miles actually shared an interesting fact with us earlier today that Alabama, aside from Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi, those states, no college football team has won a national title outside those 3 states, aside from Michigan this year.
Yeah, it's kind of odd to look at that, and I really never thought of it that way. I mean, And of course, I think you can relate to this too, Missouri being in the SEC, that the SEC is
Yeah.
a football powerhouse. I mean, it's just the way things are. We saw what Drink did this year, leading Mizzou to double digits in a bowl win over Ohio State. I don't care if they were depleted or not. The name Ohio State, the Ohio State University, carries some weight to it. But I mean, you look at Nick Saban, you look at Kirby Smart, you look Lane Kiffin's at Ole Miss now, and even like Les Miles and the coaches that were at LSU that are on those on the records for wins as head coaches. And I think at 72 years old, Nick Saban has probably he has earned the right to retire and enjoy the rest of his life. But it's weird how quickly the timeline of sports moves, because roughly I heard the news around 4:15 Central Time that he retired, and an hour and a half later you're sitting here going, well, who's going to replace him? Who's going to be the next guy that takes the Alabama job? And you never want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be the guy that follows the guy that follows the guy. So I think if Alabama's looking, I've heard that Oregon head coach Dan Lanning, who has huge ties to Alabama, he was an assistant when Kirby Smart was at Alabama, that he could be the target they're looking for. I think I posted that if I had, with this happening, there was 3 phone calls I'm making. Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin, believe it or not, and Dabo Swinney would be the other. But you can argue that the game has passed him by, just because of the fact that he's kind of in the similar ilk that Nick Saban was, doesn't care for the NIL, and he certainly doesn't like the transfer portal.
Yeah, he's been very critical of the transfer portal, and you're right about having to follow greatness. And I've been thinking about the situation with Bill Belichick. We don't know what's going to happen up in New England, if Belichick's going to be fired, or if he'll be given his option to step down on his own accord.
Right.
But imagine being the coach. I mean, it's just the NFL equivalent of Nick Saban. Like, who's going to step in his place? And when you're like somebody like Nick Saban, I mean, for 17 years, since I was 11 years old, Nick Saban has been the go-to guy at Alabama. And, we can bash him all we want. We can say how much we're sick of Alabama. He was a winner. Like, that's the thing. He was a winner. It was a winning culture. Alabama got the job done. And it, unless you're now a Crimson Tide fan, it sucked to see. But at the same time, you got to kind of put that respect there, because, I mean, he is one of the greatest coaches of all time. And some of the greatest stars in the NFL today are from Alabama.
I think a lot of times as fans, we get caught up in, unless we're a fan of the team, we don't appreciate the greatness that is truly there. And I think it's funny that you mentioned that Nick Saban, or Bill Belichick being the equivalent in the NFL of Nick Saban. Nick Saban is part of the Bill Belichick coaching tree. So, Saban was a defensive coach with Belichick and numerous other head coaches when they were at Cleveland. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in New England. And if Mike Florio's report is correct, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Kansas City. Andy Reid, who's going to be the coach that follows him. I think he's kind of led the head coaches and the greatness of coaches into, this era that we're in now. I think that you could also name, and hopefully, and he may have already kind of etched his name there a little bit, and he has actually started a coaching tree, is, when Sean McVay steps away, you're going to see, okay, so does he have a coaching tree as well? And of course, he come from at the time, the Washington Redskins, and now he has, Zach Taylor in Cincinnati is off of Sean McVay, and the head coach in Green Bay as well. So it's really weird how all of this is intertwined, but ultimately you go back to Saban and Belichick, and then it's like the branches just, they go from there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you talk about the NFL tree, but then you have a collegiate tree as well that really bounces around in all kinds of different branches. And, I look at the success that, people called this year a down year for Alabama. And yet an Alabama down year was still miles better than a lot of programs,
Right.
especially in the SEC. I mean, obviously, you're going for years to come. We're going to hear the controversy of if Georgia should have been in over Alabama, but at the end of the day, Alabama did win the SEC championship. But I will say Mizzou won the Cotton Bowl, so at least we got a bowl game victory.
I think, well, obviously, all of this gets settled next year when you go to the 12-team playoff. It's just one of those things where you look at it and go, I mean, you could have argued you could argue that Michigan and Alabama was the national championship game
Yeah,
because,
and it sure felt like it.
as much as I appreciate Michael Penix Jr.'s talent and think he'll be a great NFL quarterback, he was under siege all night from Michigan's defense. At least Alabama made the adjustments or was able to make the adjustments to at least score on Michigan. Washington, once you got to the second half, you could just tell that Michigan had worn them down.
I was gonna say Michigan was definitely built to be a juggernaut. Jim Harbaugh finally getting the title. And I think it's fitting that in a year which there was so much controversy and scandal around the Michigan Wolverines program, it's fitting that they did win the national championship. And it's interesting because we were talking about coaches and on the move, whether it be fired or retired or stepping down. Harbaugh, there's another name. And maybe not so much for being fired. You're not going to fire him just after winning the national championship. But because on top of the fact he was already garnering so much interest, now he's going to get even more interest. He's a national championship winning coach.
Well, and you have to look at it too. The NCAA is not done with that. They're still investigating some of the stuff that happened in Michigan. That case is still open. And if they're going to come down on him, like the NCAA came down on Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll said, I'm done with college football. I'm going to go to the NFL. I thought maybe he would go to the Bears. Apparently the Bears are going to keep Matt Eberflus.
Yes, they got rid of pretty much all the other coaches,
right.
But they did keep Eberflus,
so they're going to keep Eberflus, which I would have thought Harbaugh, if he was going to go for sure, would have gone to Chicago. But I mean, you're looking at there's Vegas, there's Los Angeles with the Chargers. There's his name is popping up in all of these other coaching vacancies now. And generally, where there's smoke, there's fire.
If I'm the Raiders, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a Raiders fan, so I really don't have a stake in what they do.
I'd keep Antonio Pierce.
But that's what I was going to say. If I'm in their position, I'd keep Antonio Pierce. The team had a lot of fire under him when Antonio Pierce, and I'll admit his opening conferences and stuff were just, I mean, we thought we were getting a goofball coming in.
Right.
I mean, he's talking about how he likes to field players and stuff, and I'm like, wait, what? But then here he comes. The Raiders are putting up good fight. They beat the Chiefs on Christmas. They really showed a lot of potential the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And I think it's enough to where, at the very least, Raiders owner Mark Davis has to say, you know what, we might have to stick with this guy. Because to me, a guy you want to have is one that the players love to play for. And I think that's what this team, whoever they have at quarterback, because, the jury's out on what the heck they're going to do in that situation. But I think Antonio Pierce is definitely, and what's crazy is you have the day after the regular season ends is called Black Monday.
Mm-hmm.
It's when all the coaches and everybody starts getting fired. Well, Arthur Smith got fired at 12:01 a.m. He literally got fired a minute in. And yet they're the only team that has not requested an interview with anybody for a head coach.
You're correct.
And I'm saying to myself, I mean, either they're playing chess or they don't even know how to play checkers.
Well, I wonder if maybe a Mike Vrabel or maybe even a Bill Belichick are on their radar. And, you wait.
Interesting.
You wait to see if Belichick is going to get fired. And if not, why not? If he's not going to get fired, why not go to one of his disciples and Mike Vrabel? Vrabel played underneath Belichick. He knows the systems. And, the one thing he didn't do in Tennessee was he didn't really mesh or do well with quarterbacks. Hell, he didn't really have anybody. Malik Willis, Will Levis, Ryan Tannehill, whatever. They did keep the Jaguars out of the playoffs. He was kind of a coach that could fire up a team, but it just Atlanta. First and foremost, you can't draft 2 wide receivers and a running back 3 years in a row in the first round, and it's like putting an elevator in an outhouse. There's no need for it. You've got to build the foundation first and then build from there. But I digress. But maybe they think he can come in and kind of at least fix the defense and go from there offensively. But the Falcons are a mess. The Raiders, I'm with you. I keep Antonio Pierce. Again, it'll be interesting to see because you have all of these coaching vacancies. I know that the Rams, Raheem Morris there's been a couple of teams that have asked for permission to interview him. And I think there was another coach, and I can't remember who it was. Maybe Johnson. I can't think of his first name. He's the offensive coordinator in Detroit. Ben Johnson. There's been a couple of teams that have asked to interview him too as well. So, which is good because you need to interview minority coaches. Huh?
Yeah. I said Lions have been getting a lot of looks in requests when it comes to having coaches reach out.
I hope it becomes a distraction for them.
Exactly. Speaking of the Lions, well, first, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to Roundabout Sports. It is actually the season 4 premiere. On top of the fact it's the first episode of 2024, it's always a blessing to be here, and it's an especially amazing blessing to have Hollywood James Knox back. Been the first time in over a year, and with that, I think it's about time we talk some Super Wild Card Weekend. Because this is going to happen 1 week at a time, James. We're not going to go through the entire playoffs this week. But the wild card, so we got 14 teams in the playoffs right now. The other 18 are basically who we were just talking about, twiddling their fingers, trying to figure out what they did wrong or what they done right. Like the Jaguars, who started 8-3 and decided to choke away the division in the AFC and didn't even make the playoffs.
Right.
But you got 6 teams in each conference who are going to be playing this weekend. The only teams that won't be are the top seed in the AFC and the top seed in the NFC, that being the 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens, who have probably the NFL's MVP in Lamar Jackson. So our first wild card matchup I wanted to talk about is the Buffalo Bills at the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills. Okay. To me, I don't know how Mike Tomlin does it. I don't like the Steelers. I have an obvious reason as to why I can't stand the Steelers, but I have so much respect for Mike Tomlin because he is the only guy that can make chicken salad out of chicken crap. And the Steelers team has so many problems with it, and yet somehow here they are. They made the postseason. Like they were 2-5. They've allowed more points than they scored, and they're still in the postseason. But the problems with the Steelers right now are this. You just lost arguably one of the best defensive players in the NFL in TJ Watt. And that's coming off you guys going into Buffalo, which is not an easy place to play, facing off against probably one of the hottest teams in the NFL in the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they just won the division title. Once again, comes away from the Miami Dolphins. So yeah. I mean, I want your thoughts on that game, James.
Well, you kind of nailed it. I mean, I don't know if the Steelers deserve to be there. Just in the sense of like looking at things statistically, I hate the fact that they lose TJ Watt and he's going to miss this game. But it's weird because this is not one of those teams you want to catch. I mean, Buffalo's hot. They are playing really good football, and now they have home field advantage, for this Super Wild Card Weekend matchup against Pittsburgh. I actually have quite a few Pittsburgh Steelers fans that are friends that want Mike Tomlin fired. They want him gone. Yep. They don't care that they went 9-8 and made the playoffs. They're sick and tired of mediocrity. They want him out. But it's been interesting that Mason Rudolph, since he's taken over, and being able to lead this team. The offense, while the offense doesn't look great, they've really depended on Najee Harris and Jalen Warren to really just motor that offense. And then, you throw the ball to Deontay Johnson and Pickens when you need to. I don't think it's enough this weekend against Buffalo. I think Buffalo is probably going to put it on them pretty good. Then you go from there. But I really don't see the Steelers owners whatsoever even pondering the fact of firing Mike Tomlin, because he's been there, 17 years and not had a losing season.
Yeah. Right. And I think, although I do feel, this is my thing, people will say that, and yes, it is an amazing accomplishment, but there is some inflation to it. I mean, he's had some 500 seasons. He hasn't had a playoff win in God knows how long. I mean,
it's been a while.
If your bar is just not having a losing regular season, you're
the St. Louis Cardinals. Just get in.
Exactly. It's like the Cardinals. And just get in. It's a whole new thing. So I got the Bills winning. You got the Bills winning.
Yeah.
I do know you have some other engagements you're going to have to take care of soon. So with that, I want to go to the one that you will know better than anybody else. And that is, of course, the return of Matthew Stafford to Detroit as the Los Angeles Rams take on the Detroit Lions. James, I'm letting you take the reins on this one. What do you think?
Oh man, I hate this. I really do. I watching the games on Sunday, and when the Rams beat the Niners and Green Bay won, I knew that we were going to be the 6th seed if we won, and we were going to Detroit. Man, look, I still have a soft spot for Jared Goff. I've said this before on this show in the past. I still, they're right here for Jared Goff, and this weekend I have to cheer for Aaron Donald to break him in half.
Right.
And you've got Stafford going back to Detroit. Ford Field, you could argue, was the stadium that he built. He and Calvin Johnson built that place. It's going to be weird. I know that Lions fans have instituted a Stafford jersey ban. That any number 9 jerseys, they should put tape over it and put Jameson Williams on the jersey. But I will say this much: we all know that I'm a Rams fan. I'm not going to hide that. If you are a Lions fan, the one thing that would scare me is Dan Campbell's decision making in crunch time. We saw it. We saw it in Dallas. I know that whether or not the lineman reported eligible or not, it's not the point. After the first 2 penalties, line up and kick the damn extra point and tie the game.
Thank you.
You cannot play reckless like that in the playoffs, especially against a mastermind like Sean McVay on the other sideline. Because if you want to, you just talked about, playing checkers while everybody else is, or playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. Right. This is that situation. Because, and I've banged on Raheem Morris in the past. He has done wonders with this very young and inexperienced defense. I don't think I would tempt fate in trying to be too aggressive against this Rams team. I think the Rams win, but I think it's a good game, and I think they win 28-24. I think this is going to come down to probably 2 or 3 decisions, and Dan Campbell's inexperience may cost him the game.
I think this is the thing. People are going to say the Rams shouldn't even be in the playoffs. But once again, it's getting hot at the right time. The Rams,
7-1.
They completely disappointed last year. Last year was a complete disappointment, especially.
Well, you had Stafford, Cup, Donald were all hurt. It was a mess.
Everybody was hurt. The line was terrible. Everybody, the team just collapsed after coming off.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you come into this year, and often look, okay, CJ Stroud should be in the MVP conversation. He's not gonna win MVP. He's probably going to win Rookie of the Year, but if there's anybody who you could argue would be Rookie of the Year for the offense, it's Puka Nacua. And
fifth round draft pick out of BYU.
Yes, the 5th round draft pick from BYU, the young wide receiver, breaking multiple rookie receiving yard records, some of which have stood for over 60 years. And he's, to me, the perfect complement for Cooper Kupp, because Kupp can take care of, because this is what happens when you have one guy you need to rely on too much, obviously he's going to be the one everyone target. Look at Travis Kelce and the Chiefs.
Travis
Everyone's
Smith.
after Kelce in the middle of the field because, I mean, do you think MVS is going to do something? No, he's going to drop the damn ball. That's all he ever does. So you got the Rams situation with Puka, who has absolutely shined. Cooper Kupp's had a great bounce back season. Stafford has been relatively healthy. He's done really good. Defense has stepped up. The Rams are a dangerous team. But I'm telling you, going against Detroit, that Ford Field crowd, it's
It's
going
going
to
to be
be
nuts.
it's going to be nuts. It's going to be the most nuts Ford Field game ever. I'm just saying it right now.
And the NFL was genius to put this on Sunday Night Football. Oh my God,
They
you
had
could
to.
not have. You couldn't have scheduled this any better. And
There's
you're
no
right.
other playoff game that would work right now to put on Sunday night aside from this. I do think that this is a tough call. I feel like the Lions have the edge when it comes to the talent.
Depends on if either team can kick a field goal too.
I'm about to say, if
Because
either can actually kick a
special
field
teams has
goal,
been garbage for both teams.
Rams special teams has been trash. Lions special teams has been trash. I feel that whichever team, it's basically coming off the experience of McVay and the Rams going up against the I don't even want to say so much heart because obviously everybody does, but the resiliency of the Lions.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to go with the Lions winning this one 24-21. I think there's going to be a late game. I think the crowd's going to get to Stafford to where it's going to be a late game interception, might lead to a field goal or something. It's going to be so back and forth, though. If the Rams win, I'm not going to be shocked, but I got Detroit. The main reason I got Detroit is because of my Super Bowl prediction. And I'm going to say the Super Bowl prediction for another time, although those who know me know exactly who I predict to be in the Super Bowl, and I pray to God it works. Now, James, I know you said you do got to get going, but before you go, I'm going to give you the floor and say a few words to the amazing fans tuning in because it's been a hot minute.
Wow. Kind of put me on the spot there a little bit, huh? So definitely I've missed kind of being on the show every week, and I'm going to try to be back as much as life really allows me to be. It could be hit and miss. It could be, multiple weeks in a row and then, missing some time. It's been kind of weird because, obviously kind of sports is my life in a lot of genres and in a lot of facets, whether it be talking sports or officiating or whatnot. So I hope that I know that Jeremy has kind of had a Russian roulette, if you will, of co-hosts, and they've all done a really good job. I have paid attention, even though from afar at times, but I have missed kind of interacting with you guys, and it's good to be back, even if just for a little bit tonight, and then we'll see where things go into the future. But again, I missed this an incredible amount. It's just things have not always bounced the way I've needed to lately, but we're good, and that's kind of where we're at.
You know how much I love you. My family loves you. We're so great. The viewers love you. It's great having you back. And obviously, each week we always are talking and touching base on things. And it's been a great pleasure having you on. Of course, like I said, it's been about a half hour, halfway through the show. So I mean, I only have a few more predictions I got to get through. And talk about, but it has been an absolute pleasure having you on, Hollywood. Thank you so much, man.
Before I go, are you taking the Browns over the Texans?
Of course I'm going to take the Browns over the Texans. Before you go, I don't got a blowout loss, okay? I don't got what happened last time with Amari Cooper going for 265 yards like he did. I got a close game, and I'll delve into that as soon as you leave because I'm going to say the quick score prediction. I got 31-23 Cleveland beating Houston.
I think Tua and the Dolphins freeze going to Arrowhead.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
When the predicted temperature at kickoff is 0, it works. it works both ways. Teams going to
It
Miami
is
this time of
funny
year, and
though
then
that the Chiefs are the NFL, either Kansas City's like government or governments or whatever, are telling fans or people to stay inside
I saw
over
that.
this weekend. And yet you got, I know it's on Peacock, which doesn't make a lot of people more happy, but you got this big time playoff game in the weather that, okay, I'm not going to lie. I was in Lambeau a few weeks ago and it was 40 degrees and light rain. Holy hell, sitting on those bleachers, like your ass wet and everything. But that's old
Chiefs
school football, man.
Chiefs fans will get a couple drinks in them. They'll be nice and toasty. I mean,
Exactly. They're going to be like, what snow? What
you're
snow?
not going to be paying attention to the weather because you're going to be tuned into, your
See,
team on the field. I'm just curious though. The biggest question I think of Wild Card Weekend is, with it supposed to be so cold in Kansas City, does Taylor Swift show up?
oh, God. Oh, God.
Just she'll think back to December.
Well, she'll have one of those heated suites like she usually does. She'll be good. She'll be
Yeah.
Gucci. Everything's going to be great. Well, James, I'll talk to you later, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us again. Welcome back. It's a great way to start a new year.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy, and we'll see you soon, brother.
All right, brother. Hollywood James Knox, ladies and gentlemen, on Roundabout Sports. All right. Oh, my God. It's so great having him back. I can't wait to talk to him after the show. Now, I will say, folks, yes, I told James, and I told you all before he left that I do have the Cleveland Browns over the Houston Texans, and I might as well go into why, besides the fact that, a little bit of bias here. Okay. Joe Flacco has completely turned this team around. I'm saying it right now. If Jeff Driscoll or PJ Walker or even DTR was starting this game, if anybody was starting this game besides Deshaun Watson or Joe Flacco, I'd have my doubts. But the thing of it is, Cleveland has been ravaged by injuries all season long. They are down to their fourth and fifth starting tackles. They've lost Nick Chubb for the season. They lost two of their defensive tackles. They lost one of their safeties, their kicker. I mean, the team has just been getting the hell beat out of them injury-wise, and yet somehow they go 11-6. Last week they lost because they benched everybody. They figure might as well keep everyone else healthy. But they're playing a red-hot Houston Texans team. C.J. Stroud, to me, is an MVP candidate. And if Lamar Jackson did not have as great a season as he did, I would consider him one of the top. I still consider him at least a top 5 MVP candidate. Because you have Lamar, you got Christian McCaffrey, you got Tyreek Hill, you got C.J. Stroud. And anybody can throw in whoever they want for their fifth, their fifth man. There's so many to choose from. You could go A.J. Brown. Excuse me. You can go Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, hell, if you want to throw Mahomes in there, even though he's had a down year, throw Mahomes, throw Josh Allen. I mean, here's another one, Kyren Williams for the Rams. I didn't even get to talk to James about Kyren Williams, but he's been fantastic. There's a lot of people. But C.J. Stroud and this Houston Texans team have been resilient all season long. They were expected to be last. This is a team that finished last in the league, tied for worst in the league last year. And they had 2 picks in the top 5. They used them on Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud. Both have made a big impact on this team. They went around and won the division. I love Kevin Stefanski, and I think he's going to and should win Coach of the Year. But if they gave it to Dan Campbell or DeMeco Ryans, I would not be mad. DeMeco Ryans has done a fantastic job as well. So I expect this to be a very tough game. I think Cleveland's number 1 ranked defense will combat enough to where they'll win. But, I mean, still, it's going to be tough. I'm very much looking forward to this game, and I'm grateful it's not on Peacock. But what is on Peacock is the Kansas City Chiefs against the Miami Dolphins. All right, here we go. Why do I think the Chiefs are going to win this game? Well, we kind of already touched base on the subject, and it's because of the weather. Partially because of the weather, partially because of their defense. Look, this Kansas City Chiefs defense is no joke. Coach Spags knows what he's doing. And, you got L'Jarius Sneed, who's been snubbed from the Pro Bowl, among other, different All Pro teams and awards. Um, one of the things is during the season, the Chiefs only three defenses in the NFL allowed fewer average yards per play. A lot of that goes into Spag's aggressiveness. And there he is, the Night Owl himself. I was glad to be on the Wrestle Talk podcast last night, and I do recommend you can find him on Facebook and Twitter. I'm not calling it X, it's Twitter. And on YouTube at the Wrestle Talk podcast every Tuesday night. It is such a great pleasure to be a part of that amazing family. And the Night Owl is at the centerfold of it. And he is, of course, big in the Chiefs Kingdom. So, and all right, Night Owl over here. And folks, be sure to comment. I'll say what comments I can, but the Night Owl says Travis Kelce will have a huge game. I think he will. I think he doesn't have a choice but to. Because if Mahomes wide receivers can't catch in daylight, how are they going to be able to catch in frigid conditions? I'm telling you right now, folks. I mean, Travis Kelce was only inactive the last game, and that's why he didn't make 1,000 yards. But this Chiefs defense, let me get back to this defense. The defense gave up only 289 yards a game. Only Cleveland allowed less. They are the top 10 in blitz frequency, quarterback knockdowns, prevention of red zone touchdowns, passing yards per attempt, and lowest opponent passer rating. All these come back to the fact that they can bring it to the quarterback. Now, we'll take a look at the Night Owl's comment here about Tyreek. Okay, I guess I better address the elephant in the room. This is a homecoming for Tyreek Hill, the star receiver of the Dolphins, who was once the star receiver of the Chiefs. I do think he's due for a big game. The thing of it is, Tua, excuse me, if you watched the game last week against the Buffalo Bills in Miami, it was a very sloppy game for Tua. And I think it's gonna be worse in frigid, snowy conditions in Kansas City. Look, the Chiefs may not be as intimidating as they were, but hell, Arrowhead Stadium in the wintertime in playoff, Chiefs are a different team. It's like my friend Corey in Madden, I mean, he's hell good in the regular season, but he's damn near unstoppable in the playoffs. So don't worry, my friend Apple's amazing too when it comes to Madden. So I just had to put that out there. But Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, excuse me, they both got 10.5 sacks each. Justin Reed led the team with 95 tackles, and Nick Bolton is still a good field general despite the fact he missed a few weeks with the broken wrist. Tua is 0-2 against the Chiefs in his career as well. So I want it to be known here, folks, that I got the Chiefs, and I don't necessarily know what the score would be. I mean, I don't know the score of any of them. I expect like maybe a 17-10 game, if that. I don't expect a high scoring game. We thought we were going to get a shootout earlier in the year, and we didn't. But I got the Chiefs in this one over Miami. So now we got the AFC ones down, and we got one NFC one down. Might as well go through the rest of the NFC. Okay. This one is absolutely bonkers to me that it's even happening. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Philadelphia is the first team in NFL history to go 1-5 in their final 6 games after starting 10-1. They started the season 10-1, folks. They thought they were going to go blow everybody right out the water. Nope. Much like the Jaguars, Eagles choked a lot away, but they at least were able to cling onto a wild card berth. Tampa Bay, meanwhile, look, I've talked about comeback player of the years, and you can talk about Joe Flacco, and you can. I'm sorry, Damar Hamlin's not comeback player of the year. He shouldn't be. I'm sorry. His story is inspirational, and I'm happy he's doing much, much better. But to be a comeback player of the year, you have to play. And you have to do something when you play. Which brings me to this quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Baker went from really struggling on the Panthers to being released to being on the Rams and doing a little bit to absolutely tearing it up this year for Tampa Bay, being the successor to Tom Brady. Um, and I look at how Baker Mayfield has done this season, and I'm in awe. Like Baker this season, he went for over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. He completed almost 65% of his passes. And they clinched the division. They won the division title. So they faced the Eagles. The thing of it is, and I'm just going to say it. I know it's going to sound crazy, but I'm just going to say it. I got the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are hot at the right time, and that's what a lot of this comes down to. The Eagles just got practically blown out by the Giants a week after losing to the Cardinals. I mean, the Eagles just don't have it. They are the definition of limping into the playoffs. They absolutely have limped into the postseason. Dallas usurped them for the division title. We're about to touch base on the Cowboys next, and then we got what's going on in Tampa, where yes, the division was terrible. The NFC South is the worst division in football. Panthers, hot garbage. The New Orleans Saints, they don't know if they want to be a good team or not because they're constantly putting up bad performances and then have some great ones mixed in there where they want to say, here, I got some hope that we're going to really do something, but nah, let's fail. And then, like we talked about, the Falcons, great on paper, terrible when it comes to the execution. Maybe that'll change now that Arthur Smith's fired. Who knows? Tampa Bay's done a great job. I got them beating the Eagles in an upset victory. I know they still consider the Eagles the favorites, which brings me to my last wild card prediction of the week. The Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. Um, and I know my friend Andrew's got Green Bay, and I understand it. I understand why. Jordan Love, one of the hottest quarterbacks as far as performance goes this season statistically. Green Bay was not expected to be here. They were expected to be potentially at only 6 wins, maybe less. Aaron Rodgers went to New York and played for 4 seconds. Aaron Jones kept getting hurt. Bakhtiari's been out all year practically. Jair Alexander doesn't know how to do a coin toss. You know, there's just been injuries left and right. But the past 2 months, the Green Bay Packers have been a completely different team. And it's because of that they are in the postseason. But they're going to be going to one of the toughest places to play in the NFL, and that's Dallas. The Cowboys, if this year is not the year for the Cowboys, then I don't think it ever will be for this incarnation, this group. If Dak does not lead them to the Super Bowl this year, I don't think he'll ever lead them to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott, you could put him in the MVP conversation as well. But you got CeeDee Lamb, who's a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. You got still a very good Dallas offensive line. You got a defense that not only knows how to get the ball back, cause turnovers, but makes points out of them. Deron Bland making NFL history, excuse me, with 6 pick sixes on the season. And I look at this team. This has to be the year for Dallas. But will it? I don't know. So the main thing for me is this red hot Packers offense against the stout Cowboys defense. I have no issue believing the Cowboys will chew up the defense of the Packers. But it comes down to the Cowboys defense against Green Bay. I'm not gonna lie, and I know Andrew will kill me when he hears it, but I'm giving Dallas the edge on this. I got Dallas over Green Bay. And since I'll do a prediction on a score on this one, I'm going to really do an interesting one. I'm doing 28-27 because it's going to come down to the wire. I think the offense of Green Bay will still hang in there, but I think it's going to be a hell of a day for them. So, with that, folks, there you have it. You got my 6 Super Wildcard Weekend predictions. The Ravens will be chilling out at home. The Niners will be chilling out at home. Us fans are going to be chilling out at home. A lot of people will be chilling out trying to get Peacock subscriptions so they can watch the Chiefs game even in the local market. And my dad, who has historically hated the Cowboys, just sent in that his favorite team is the team that is playing the Cowboys. Always has been. We watched the Lions and Cowboys game, and he was beyond pissed when Dan Campbell went 3 times for a 2-point conversion and didn't get it when he could have just kicked the extra point, whatever the case may be. But there you have it, folks. And next week, we're going to make sure to do the divisional round and championship round and so on and so forth. And, I'm looking forward to it. Although I'm sad. I'm sad the playoffs are almost over. I'm sorry. I'm sad the football season's already almost over. But there'll be good news in the future for us football fans because the UFL will be back before we know it. And quick little tidbit. For those that don't know what the UFL is, the XFL and the USFL merged. One big happy family football league, sponsored by alcohol. But nevertheless, football will be here before we know it. Okay. Well, with that, folks, we're going to be closing up here on Roundabout Sports. Be sure to advertise us, DM us on our Facebook page or myself or Hollywood James Knox. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, all these other places. You got a place where you can watch a podcast. Type in Roundabout Sports. Try to look for that pretty logo. I'm sure you'll find it. And if not, look for the one that's on the top right of your screen with the I-70 Sports Media logo. And of course, audience participation is always wonderful on this show. So if you ever have a question about one of the things we're talking about, be sure to let us know and we'll get you covered. Also, as we close the show, we always put up the NAMI helpline or NAMI, whatever you want to call it, is the helpline, is the National Alliance. It's the National Alliance of Mental Illness. The phone number is 1-800-950-NAMI. It is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for those who struggle. And of course, we put on the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and for that, you dial 988. The line is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. Understand that you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody out there who loves you and cares about you. And you could also be the listening ears for somebody else that is struggling on a daily basis, because we all go through struggles, but we should never have to go through them alone. It's not an easy thing to do. No one should have to fight their battles, in sadness and loneliness. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to give an especially big shout out to Hollywood James Knox. And be sure to find us on YouTube at Interstate 70 Sports Media and Roundabout Sports. Be sure to find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. We're all over the place. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. I'm the Maestro. Good night.